Well, hello again, and we are lighting the candle, a world that works. And I've got to tell you, I am so excited today. Every once in a while, a really special wind blows my way. And I got to tell you that this interview today, slash co creation, slash out to change the world between two crackpots that really believe that it is the birthright of every human being to be happy. It's like to start, that's not a destination. Bring happiness with you everywhere you go. So I'm really pleased. And I call her the Queen of Happiness. I don't know what her personal designation is, but I am Bill Correll, and this Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, has been going on now for nigh on to 87 episodes. And every single time we are exploring what will it take? What kind of conversations? What sort of words? We're taking our cues from you, the listening audience. Although we're in a different time than you will be when you're listening to this, what the energy is non-temporal. We can hear it, we can feel it, and just keep, you know, goading us and egging us on and rooting for us. And we're going to give you everything that we can. And we're going to have a good indication that if we're getting goosebumps, maybe we're delivering that for you as well. And so if that happens, hey, can that be so bad? So with that said, I want to introduce my really good friend, JoAnna Brandi. And she is coming to us with all kinds of expertise and experience, and she's just a black belt in what it takes for human beings, to alter their reality in the moment, to shift from wherever they are that's not in happiness back into happiness again. So we're going to just kind of like do a little let's just call this a little linguistics surfing today. Does that work for you, JoAnna? Would you like to say some more about who you are and what you do?
That works for me. I like linguistic surfing. It's one of my greatest pleasures, actually.
We all need those.
Having real we do, and that we can talk about that. We can talk about that. I'm JoAnna Brandi, and I actually do have a designation. I'm certified as a Chief Happiness Officer by Florida International University, and I am. What do you hear this one? An authentic happiness coach who studied with Dr. Martin Seligman 18 years ago, long time ago, when he first he is the founding father of positive psychology. So I was taught by some of the masters, and I am a perpetual student. It makes me happy to study. So I've also studied with Barbara Fredrickson, with oh my gosh, there's just such a long list of people that I've studied with through the years. And I was also part of a group of happiness coaches for 8 years. And we get on the phone once a week, and we discuss books, and we talk to each other about our work. It was magnificent.
Excellent. So you at home should know that every once in a while, for my guest, JoAnna's entertainment, I will be stroking my beard. And you can't see that, but I'm just giving you a heads up. So if you suddenly hear JoAnna cracking up, then she's just a good friend getting the joke. Okay.
Oh, you know what? And he's doing it on purpose. I mean, he really is. He knows it's going
100%.
to make me laugh.
100%.
It's quite the sight.
So let's start off with, how about a blue collar working man's definition, and woman, we're not sexist here, uh, of happiness?
I
Or
don't define it. I've stayed away from that. I know there are lots and lots and lots of happiness teachers who define happiness, but what makes you happy and what makes me happy are two different things. But I can more tell you about what it's not than what it is. It's not a vague state of mind. Happiness is an actual state of the body mind. There is a change in your heart rate variability. There is a change in your brain waves. There is a change in the energy of your body, because and there's a change in your bloodstream because your body produces different chemicals. So happiness is a it's a how would I say that? It's a positive state for the body. It actually changes your body and your mind. So it's a beneficial change in your state.
I actually like that whole notion of the mind body connection, because people act as if they're disparate, that they're not connected. And the truth is 100%. The mind, the heart, and the gut are all part of the sensory system
Yeah.
that helps us interact with the universe and the world and with our loved ones, especially those loved ones on tense occasions, right? So I have one more question, a fact question to ask you. Is that an avocado plant over your shoulder there?
No, that's a money tree.
Say some
I'm,
more
I'm
about that,
trying
please.
desperately to keep it alive. It keeps dropping leaves, and I talk to it, and I give it Reiki, and I tell it how much I love it. But I think I might be overwatering it.
Yeah, that's your the stress of all this pressure and the plant is rebelling. I love it. Have you named the tree?
I have not named the tree. I talked to my, I have a porch full of, I've been in the same apartment for 20 some odd years. And the first year I got here, I bought a little Norfolk Island pine that was maybe 1 foot tall. Now it's taking up like 12 feet. It's so huge. So I have conversations with my plants, but I don't name them.
Yes. So I bring that up because our frequent flyer podcast listeners know that our one of our anchors, Lisa Sheehan, went through a period of time, and we were giving updates on these corn plants that she was working on. She started with some seed, right, and then
Yeah.
got them to do the shoots, and then they started shooting up, their little leaves and everything. And so she named one of them Corny. And so she's been giving us Corny reports. And unfortunately,
Oh my
Corny
God.
got banished to the outside because Corny had some bad friends. And I mean,
Oh.
I mean bad in the sense of not good for humans. There were these little fruit fly sort of things that
Mhm.
that wound up coming over and making Corny their nest. So she said, "Sorry, Corny, you're going outside." And then we had snow the next day. So I can't wait for the next podcast with Lisa so we can get an update on how old Corny's been.
How are corn plants doing?
But back to the present time, in terms of this money tree, what's the history of that? How did you get this money tree? Is it available for the general public, or is this something that they can intend and cause to happen themselves?
Oh no, this is something you buy in Home Depot. A friend of mine bought it for me.
A money tree. I
It's
love it.
called it's called a money tree. It's called a money tree. I just think it always gets, the last one that did not survive got so big that my way of thinking about it is you need to put it in a larger pot,
Sure.
because it just didn't look like it was doing well. It was in this tiny little pot. But from the day I repotted it, it wasn't doing well. I think they like to have really tight roots.
Sure.
And let's put it back in the frame of happiness. I used to have a very large garden when I owned a home.
Yes.
And one of the ways that people get happy is by having hobbies, by having that kind of levity that you have with your friend, where you can name your tree or name your beard, or make fun about things that you both understand, not make fun about each other, but make fun about things you both understand and where
Yeah.
you're on the same wavelength.
A shared joke is always a good thing, isn't it?
A shared joke is a really good thing.
Especially if it's a joke that reminds you to be happy and diminishes no one in the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think when I think about how we as Americans think about comedy, um, it's just sarcasm, and it's putting people down, and we're trained to listen. Someone makes a sarcastic remark to their brother or sister or mother or father, whatever, and the laugh track goes on. So we're somehow being reinforced that this kind of cruelty is okay. Uh, it's rare that we see real humor.
Well, and the other part of it that you're referencing is it's totally inauthentic. It's totally staged, and it has absolutely nothing to do with two human beings having a functional adult conversation with each
Mhm,
other. It's called
mhm.
who can do the most one-upping for the audience. It's got nothing to do
Right,
with
right.
building any type of communication bond between the two of them. So you mentioned something. I'm going to take you up on it because I don't get an opportunity to regard my beard as something that can be named. Um, and so, if you were going to name my beard, what would you name it, JoAnna?
Oh, hmm. The first thing that popped into my mind was fuzzy. It's not very clever, but that's the very first thing that popped, because I think I knew your face without a beard, or just with the facial hair, but
Well,
not that
actually,
long
you did.
beard.
I was clean shaven when we
Yes,
first
yes.
met.
So my friend Bill now looks fuzzy.
Yes. and I've actually lopped about 4 inches off of the bottom of it because I was looking like one of the soggy bottom boys, you know.
Oh my
And my
goodness.
wife said, "Man, I don't mind the beard; it's really growing on me. But do you think maybe you could even it out on the bottom just a hair?"
Well,
And
I'll tell you a funny story. My I haven't been married for many, many years, but my former husband had a beard. And one day I came home from work and there is this man sitting in my living room and I screamed. He shaved off his mustache, he shaved off his beard, and
yeah,
I wouldn't talk to him for over a week. And he was really upset about that. He said, "How could you be so upset?" He said, "I just did it on a whim." I
yeah,
said, "You could have prepared me. You have a whole different face." And he kept that whole different face until the day that I went into labor with my daughter. And he decided not to shave. And he still has the same beard that started when she was born years ago.
that's funny. So before we move on, I just really want to be on purpose about this because you've put the energy into it.
Okay.
And quite frankly, in the little bit more than a year, I think I've been doing this since June of last year. Really, my daughter kind of goaded me into it and said, the son-in-laws are growing beards. Why don't you grow one too? And I left those boys in the dust. This thing just it went on and took on a life of its own. And guys, seriously, when I trimmed it back, it was 9 inches long from the bottom of my chin to the bottom of my beard.
Oh,
And so, all of that said, henceforth, so let it be written, so let it be said, this beard's name shall be Fuzzy. So
you could make
monikered
a good
by my
Santa
dear.
Claus.
Yes, I could do a good Santa Claus, but I'm gonna
Right.
have to do something with the top because it's
Yeah.
still got dark hair. So let's just take a little bit of a breather here for a second. Moving off the beard, we can come back to it because it is it's definitely here for your
Well,
entertainment.
it makes you happy.
It does, yeah. And you know
So
why?
let's talk about happiness.
Yeah, well, and the other part of it is too is that I've found, see, the psychological effect, and what I've always heard about a beard is that it gives you a wider than 3 feet space of respect. This is old psychology from the
Oh,
1970s, if you will, but the whole idea is that people with facial hair, see, there's this kind of arbitrary space. If it's true or not true doesn't matter to me right now. It's something I heard along the way that
mhm.
this is you don't violate that distance between human beings. Of course, I hug everybody now, so that's forget about that. But the point is that my psychology teacher had a goatee, which was very fashionable for psychology people back in the
Mhm.
1970s. And Chuck's goatee was a masterpiece. I mean, are you familiar with a concept of a 7-point beard? Where it's defined with little sharp edges and points here and there, and it comes into
No,
this
but as you're describing it, I think I've seen it.
perfect Van Dyke at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
Right. So he was, shall we say, he didn't suffer in the area of self-evaluation and self-worth.
There
I
you go.
think he may have valued himself a little higher than the rest of the folks around him, and that's a good thing, right? So anyway, so he would tell us, that the reason that he had a beard was because has a very, very young looking face, and what he found was he didn't command the appropriate
Mhm.
amount of respect as a college professor that he thought he should have, that there were too many people that felt that he was more like a college student and less like a professor, so hence the beard. So now I want to give you some feedback. Of course, this is 40 some years later, and I don't find that at all. I actually find that it makes it easier for people to approach me. If I have folks that will come up to me when I've got my mask on and my beard sticking down below it. uh, I had a guy, I'm going to guess is probably in his late 70s, early 80s, who had a little beard, and he only came up, to about the middle of my chest. He came over and he said, "You got a problem. There's something growing out of your mask and is tugging away at my beard like crazy." Now, this is a guy I never met before in my entire life at
Oh,
99 Restaurant, right? So I've got a bunch of those kind of stories, but I think the whole point is yes. Let's get back to happiness for a moment.
yeah.
It is a focal point where people can either enjoy it or they can make fun of it, or they can have a little bit of levity at my expense, and it's a shared thing because the beard can come or go easily, right?
Hmm. Well, not quite so easily. If it goes, it takes a long time to grow it back and get it back to that length.
Through that is a true story right there, you
Yeah.
know. So in the domain of happiness, when we get
Mhm.
back to happiness, we're
That's a good
having
idea.
we're having a fun chat here, and there's a lot of talk about the beard. However, where do you go to focus on the opportunity to increase your state of happiness in those moments where it's not present?
Oh boy, and there have been many moments. I think you know that I'm just coming out of a COVID experience, um, which was very, very emotionally charged because I went and did my first speaking engagements in 2 years in Alabama
Yeah.
right before Thanksgiving. And apparently, somewhere along the line, I picked up COVID and walked right into my daughter's house feeling fine. But the next day, I had what appeared to be a cold, and she was fearful about COVID in the first place. So she had a COVID test in the house, and I tested positive for COVID. Not only did I get it, she got it. So I have really been challenged um, with the happiness stuff in the past several weeks. It's really pushed me to the wall, pushed me down, bounced me back up. Um, First of all, I noticed that I was human, and
Yeah.
that with all these skills that I have and all these things that I teach, when your heart is breaking, it's hard. So, the one sure way that I know to find happiness or some version of a positive emotion is to go to gratitude, is
Yeah.
to find something to be grateful for and focus on that. And that is something that I've learned through the years, is that idea that you can expand your focus on something. So rather than just saying thank you or I'm grateful for, to actually get into the heartfelt feeling of happiness. I do it physically because I've studied out at the Institute for Heart Math in California, and I literally put my hands on my heart. And I teach my clients, by the way. I've got people all over the country in sales positions, in customer service positions, in medical positions, putting their hands on their hearts, closing their eyes, evoking a positive emotion, usually something they appreciate, that literally, if they stay with it for more than 20 seconds, that literally changes their heart rate variability and therefore the electromagnetic field around their body.
That is awesome. So I have
Yeah,
a question for you.
sure,
Do you actually have like an example or a little process that you put people in a room through where they do
sure.
that for 20 seconds? Would you like to
Yeah.
take us through that for a moment?
Well, it's just what I said it was, and I did it. I do it every time I teach. I was teaching yesterday, two groups of. It's a financial company, and ostensibly they're coming to learn about better customer care. But the CEO is brilliant, and she decided everybody was going to take the training, and we're on week number 5 out of a 6-week program, and these guys are learning it so well, it's unbelievable. And one guy's name is Jason. I'll just take you through that first. He said to me, it was so, we're doing this on, well, now we're on Teams, but we were on Zoom. We can see everybody. Teams helps us hear everybody. And they all check in, and we do a circle of appreciation at the end. But Jason gets on yesterday, and he said, I just have to say thank you for something. I said, what? What'd you do? What happened? He said, this morning I was to have a conversation with a client that I thought was going to be awful. And last night, I literally ate myself up about it. I couldn't sleep. I made myself sick. And this morning, I thought about it ahead of time. And I said, he said, what would JoAnna do?
Yeah.
And he said, JoAnna would put her hand on her heart and would breathe and would think about something positive and would reframe the situation. And then he made the call. And everything worked out much better than he ever could have expected. So here was a guy, not me, not the teacher, but here's somebody in the company that is giving this amazing example, and everybody heard it.
So you know what's extraordinary about this? It is not only amazing, it's just so simple that most people, you already have all the technology that you need. You certainly have the tools. And if you don't have two hands, maybe there's another way you can appropriate the same kind
Just
of
one
energy.
will do, actually. You don't need two.
Exactly. So,
Just one will do.
folks at home, what do you think? Shall we have JoAnna take us through an exercise here for 20 or 30 seconds or so?
It's very easy. Let me do that. I would love to do, because
Uh,
I don't think they can answer you right now.
no,
I
I'm
think I
hearing it.
can.
It's very loud. I mean, the din should be bothering you. Are you kidding me? They're all saying yes. Let's do it. Go, JoAnna.
Okay,
Go.
good, good. Well, we always start with the breath.
Okay. What kind of breath?
So do your best to relax your body and take in a very deep breath, and take it in through your nostrils if you can. Breathe in and let that beautiful oxygen go as deeply into your chest and your belly as you are willing to allow it. And then just let it go. And then for good measure, breathe in again. Feel that air going down through your body into your belly. And then exhale. And then what I'd like you to do is take a hand or two and put it in the area around your heart. Can be the middle of your chest too, because that's still the heart center. And I'd like you, and if you're willing to close your eyes, if you're driving, please don't do that. If you're willing to close your eyes, I'd like you to think about something that you deeply appreciate. It can be something as simple as the fact that you can turn on the tap and get water in your home, or it could be a relationship that you treasure, a favorite food, the face of someone you love, a hobby, a child, anything that you really appreciate, and bring to your mind's eye a vision of that person or thing. And you may notice that a smile starts happening on your face. And just be in that. Pretend you can marinate in that moment. And you can also pretend that that heart feeling is starting to move all throughout your body. So it's like you become a heart. Everything in your body is resonating with this beautiful, beautiful sense of appreciation or gratitude. And just breathe into that for another moment or two. And that's it. It changes your state. So, Bill, why don't you tell me, since I can't hear from anybody else but you, how has your state changed as a result of that?
Let me pull the audience for a moment and see what they come up with. All right. So I'm hearing from somebody. I think her name is Sam, and essentially what she's saying, JoAnna, is she went from before listening to this podcast thinking about something that didn't go well for her this morning, and that she, to use her words, her terminology, she was completely freaked out, and she wanted to know how hard this was going to be, and then as you described the way to do it, and how to feel the energy, she said she actually could feel her body get warm, and it seemed to her as if the energy was no longer trapped. It felt like it was actually expanding and filling the room, and that warmth started from her solar plexus and then just went out to her extremities. Even her toes were tingling.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam, that's really great. I mean, I appreciate your openness, and thank you for sharing that with us. My personal experience, JoAnna, when I want a minute to really just kind of get grounded again in a moment, I think about family. And
Mm-hmm.
I start with my beautiful wife, and I give thanks for her, and I'm totally grateful, for all of our time together. And I've told you about this in the past, but I had dreams about her when I was 12 years old and didn't meet her until we were both 18. and I knew when I laid eyes on her that I was going to be with her for the rest of my life,
Oh, wow.
and or at least marry her. Let's put it that way. And of course, we've been together now. We just had our 45th wedding anniversary, and the thing to say about that is that maybe we're just too stubborn, to say we made a mistake. But I don't know. Every single morning, I'm present to the fact that I wake up with her at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, because that's the time that she gets up to go do her job, and then I'm here to support her and see her smile and thank her for being in my life. And I always call her beautiful and gorgeous and all those kinds of things. So I'm filled up with that. And then I think about my two daughters and my wonderful sons-in-law, and I actually think about my two grandchildren. And so it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
there's just there's an abundance of love and an abundance of warmth, and their smiles absolutely just melt my heart.
And that's the presence of joy in your body. One thing that I have learned for the last number of years that I've been teaching happiness, we talk about happiness. Uh, I think what we're really seeking is joy. Is that I think happiness is in a shorter period of time, but the more pervasive actual feeling in the body is the feeling of joy.
I really think that that's a very powerful distinction for people, because almost everyone that has gone beyond, like the fifth or sixth grade in terms of formal education, they have no relationship to that feeling of joy as a choice. They have
Mhm.
no relation to the access. Like happiness is a place, a destination. It's if I do this and I do that, then I'll be happy, right? Like there's a transaction involved. We get trained that way, in my
We
opinion,
do.
in our culture.
We
And what
do.
you're saying is we're more or less just kind of letting that bad boy come out and play, right? It's already
Mhm.
here.
It is already here, and we all have moments where we can touch it. The question is, are we making the choice to go there? So I say happiness is a choice. Is it a choice every minute of every day? For some people, it can be.
Yes.
We can say joy is a choice. I think joy is the more pervasive emotion that's underneath it. One of the things I teach is that when you are looking for happiness out there, the biology of the body takes over,
Yes.
because 50% of our happiness comes from our genetics. And if you weren't happy as a baby, if you weren't happy as a child, you're most likely not going to be happy as an adult if you rely on that 50%. That leaves 50%, right? So I was not a happy child. I was colicky, cranky, screaming, made life miserable for everybody because I didn't sleep. So I did not grow up with the disposition of a happy kid. Since learning about happiness, I've really been able to understand where I have power. I have power over most of the circumstances in my life, not all of them. I have power over the things that I choose to do that don't put happiness. It's I don't look for happiness when I don't say I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get that phone call from Bill Correll. I'll be happy when I get that client. I'll be happy when I get the new car. I'll be happy when I get the new shoes. I don't look out there for it because I know that that happiness is short-lived. It lasts for about 2 months. It's an adaptation response that the body has, and that's about as long as the new car smell actually lasts. And when the new car smell is over, you're not quite as happy with the car. It's still nice to have, but the kind of happiness that I'm talking about is the kind that comes from deep relationships with people, from having purpose in life, meaning in life, from having love, from having hobbies, from having things that give you pleasure, like music or dance or walks in nature. There are so many accessible portals to become happy, even if you weren't born happy.
So, nature or nurture, 50% each. And if you're light on one, you can always get it from the other side.
Well, and you know what? We're not sure, but I get into that debate with a lot of people because a lot of people go, wait a minute, 50%, I don't know about that. I don't think you can separate. And I'll tell you why. Um, I have a cousin who unfortunately I lost last year, and she's 11 years older than I am, and she remembered a lot about my childhood because my parents were so frustrated with me. They were both lawyers. They were young and had just started their own business, and they were exhausted by the time the weekends came. So they would drive me up to the Bronx. We lived in New York. Would drive me up to the Bronx and drop me off at her house. So it's my aunt and uncle's house, and leave for the weekend and go home and sleep. So she remembers a lot about who I was and how I was and all that. And what I gathered from putting it all together was that my parents didn't have the capacity, because they were exhausted all the time. They didn't have the capacity to do a lot of the gaga goo goo, let's be happy with this baby, because that was always screaming.
Yeah.
So, back then we didn't know there was a thing as lactose intolerance. We just said that's a colicky baby. And colic, so I don't think it's just nature. I think it has to do because when you have a happy baby, and I would guess that you probably had two happy children, right? No, okay. But when you have a happy baby, you treat them differently
Yes.
because they're so easy. Oh, he's such an easy baby. And you get to relax and you get to enjoy and you're not stressed all the time. So I don't really think that we can separate them, but for the purpose of understanding, I think it's really important for people to understand that part of their happiness is just their nature. And they can't do these studies anymore because it's illegal to separate twins at birth. But many of the studies that were done with children, twins, identical DNA twins who were separated at birth. And they would track them down 40 or 50 years later, living in different places of the country. And they had about the same dispositions no matter what the conditions of their life had been.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a lot of study. I think it's useful. I think it's useful for the illustrative purposes of being able to say, take a picture. It looks like a pie. Half the pie is going to came from your genetics and your upbringing, and the other half of the pie you have some control over.
Sure. And I hear the caveat in the fine print below that basically says, and your mileage may vary,
And your mileage may vary. Exactly.
So, but
Exactly.
if you want to look at trying to understand, if you tend to have a hard time disposing of happiness, I mean, where you can actually choose to have a notion of happiness and then bring the happiness in. What you said earlier, I could think about calling Bill Correll, and then when I speak to him, I'm going to be happy. But I know the truth is you're thinking about calling Bill Correll makes you happy right in that moment.
Oh
You
yeah.
are already like right now. Okay. I can think of that rascal stroking his beard to try to make me break up on this podcast. See, the whole idea is that, the Simon and Garfunkel song, I am a rock, I am an island, and a rock feels no pain and an island never cries.
That
And
was my mantra as a teenager.
so, well, let me go out on a limb here and say I don't know what the population distribution is between the 50% and the 50%,
I
but
don't
there
either.
are a number of people, and my dearly beloved wife, at the as much as she has a blessed life that she appreciates, there is a predisposition chemically and organically for her to
Mhm,
to see the dark side in things.
mhm.
And a lot of that has to do with upbringing and training and
Absolutely.
being the child of parents that were much, much older. And I mean, like, seriously, her dad was over 50 years older than her.
Oh wow.
So, and thank God he was, okay. And her mom was 35 years older than her, and both of them are gone, and they were absolutely salt of the earth, beautiful people, but they both had pretty pessimistic, they came through the depression, and her dad was actually born in 1899, so it was easy to keep track of how old he was.
Oh.
What year are we in? That's how old he is, right? So the point is that they were, let me put it to you this way, they were more agrarian than most of the people that I ever grew up around.
Uh-huh.
He lived on a farm. He was a country lawyer. He also had a city job as a lawyer in an office on Main Street. And at the same time, they wanted to prepare her for the things in life that were not going to go well for her.
Right.
without knowing for sure what they were, they kind of put a scare into her, and they don't, no parent ever does this on purpose.
No, they do it because they think they're doing what's right.
Absolutely. I'm trying to prepare you for the letdowns that you're going to have, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
want them to be,
Mm-hmm.
chasms. I don't want you to fall off the face of the planet for weeks at a time. So, all of that said, she is very much, these days, easy to bring back into, a happy moment. And it usually just takes a few key words. I stroke my beard for you. I have a few other things that I do with her, and we have our we have our own. Now, easy there. Okay, I'm. This is a clean show. I'm
I
talking.
know.
All right. So here's what I'm talking about. So we have these things that we go back to, little sayings that we have come up with each other, other over the
Right.
years. Like might be a two or three words of a song. It could be one of these, fractured words that our 2-year-olds said when they thought they were saying something else. Because, like when Heidi was 2 years old, that thing that was white and had the red, spinning lights on the top of it that carried sick people to the hospital was called an
Yeah.
ambulance, right? An
Oh,
ambulance. And a cigar was called a spodie, not a stogie. It was called a spodie. So there were all these kinds of things. And in an instant, I can say these words to her. She can say words to me, and then both of us are brought back to, yeah,
and that's what's so interesting about it is that we can do that. One of the things that I teach is about building the strong neural pathway, because I often, not always, but often identify myself as a recovering pessimist because I never want to forget where I started.
sure,
My parents were both lawyers and very well trained in looking for what was wrong,
right,
and they were absolutely expert at looking what was wrong with their children, at what we did wrong. And of course I was schooled in Catholic school, so we had it all day long, and then you went home and got it at night. And I grew up in the era where if you did something wrong at school, and back then they used to hit us. So if you did something wrong at school,
box
you did,
our
or
ears
box the
or
ears.
lift us
And
by the earlobes.
right. And I once got hung in a closet, but we won't even talk about that. Uh, can you say child abuse? But
JoAnna, before you go on, I lovingly referred in my teens back to my second and third grade teachers. They were both beautiful. However, Mother Superior, who was also the principal of the school, I called her Sister Mary of the Inquisition.
okay, so you get it then.
I do.
When if we went home and said that I got hit in school, you had took a chance of getting hit at home because they would say you must have deserved it.
Yeah, no
If that
questions
if that
asked,
nut
right?
smashed your knuckles. But so it it doesn't go away. But what happens is that you create a new neural pathway that's stronger. That's why I talk about positivity practices and
Sure.
happiness as a practice. Because when you do it over and over again, when you train yourself over and over again to go to that, even for just a moment, even 20 seconds, to go to that great memory of the beautiful smell of we have some beautiful flower. I live in Florida, so we have these beautiful flowers around here, and you get these, you get that fragrance, and you just go, oh my goodness, where did that come from? It's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And to go to something that is going to bring you a sense of pleasure or joy or meaning, you can build that neural pathway so that it's quicker. So I'm never going to not react negatively to something that happens because I can't rewire the entire brain. But what I can do is rewire it enough that it's a much shorter road to get to the happy thought.
No, see, that's the whole thing for human beings, right? We go through this whole gauntlet called life, and the goal is never to not experience,
Right? You have to
downtime
experience
or
life.
pain or sorrow or grieving. It's
Mhm.
called the pathway back to power needs to be, something that you have some say so about.
Mhm.
And when you're looking at, like for instance, early on, and I'm using my wife because she would not have a problem with me doing so, is that, sometimes, around exam time or other times like that, that she would go into what we commonly called a funk, for 2, 3, 4 days. And we really just thought that all you could do is just wait until it rushed over and we're done with it. But the training that I've had since then in the last 40 years is that, you know, we don't want to be in a broken down space for any longer than is absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
So developing these techniques, and as you said, the neural pathways, it's a very interesting psychological phenomenon. And then there's this whole study. I would be interested in your thoughts on it. That, like for instance, once we've done that, we are now reinforced, and we're building muscle in that area. And now
Mhm.
it's actually got some, some range and some depth, and it's got some, capacity. Okay, so there's this whole concept along with that same kind of thinking, which is called, those early memories that we know that we have. Well, there's
Mhm.
a whole study that's going on, and I can't cite it right now, but on this show, I never have to because this is just Bill talking. But there's
Okay.
a thing called remembering.
Okay.
And the gist of that is that those things that you remember so strongly, as if it's completely etched in stone somewhere, it's on tablets that it happened this way, it's more than likely it never did. And what the science is showing with the studies that they've done in this particular paper that I read was that most people have a very strong memory of the last memory that they had of that circumstance. And each one reinforces those things that have some kind of an emotional attachment and
Yeah.
is still in their body.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for instance, that's one of the reasons why they say that eyewitnesses in a court case where the case took place over a year ago are totally influenceable and can be 100% wrong
Oh,
on
sure. Sure.
everything that they say. And you'll find that in family discussions too from time to time, especially
Oh, all the time.
yeah, during the holidays when you get to go and relive the horror of your youth with the original cast, you know, the thing is that most of the people in the room aren't talking about their memories that might be as much as 75 or 80% wrong, you know? And they're doing that in place of getting to know each other, who they are right now. And so what I love about what you're saying is that the neural pathways, that once they've been carved, they're going to work a particular way until you have to work extraordinarily hard to change them to another way. Yes?
I don't think it's extraordinarily hard. I don't think it's any different than building a bicep. I'm a little out of shape now, for a number of reasons, and COVID being one of them, because I couldn't bring myself to go into a gym. Um, but I know that when I get back to it and start doing this over and over and over again, that's going to build up, whether it wants to or not. It's going to build up. So it's a matter of presence. It's a matter of focus. It's
Yes.
a matter of, and it's a matter. I had a coach many years ago, who used to talk to me a lot um, about remembering. He said life is about forgetting and remembering.
Yes.
And he said it's very important to pay attention to the fact that you can remember. You can remember what it felt like when you felt good. You can remember that you remember that life is good. You can you it was so profound for me, because how many times do we forget? How many times do I forget that I have the capacity to be happy? How many times do I get lost in depression? I am a trauma survivor. And in the last couple of years, it's really been, well, I'm actively working with it. So every once in a while, I drop into that funk because I'm actively working with a memory that was traumatizing.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm okay. And sometimes I'm in a funk for 4 or 5 days because what I've done is I've activated all this stuff in my body, and now I have to process it because trauma gets stored in the body. And this is something we never knew. There's a doctor by the name of Gabor. Why is his first name? I can see his face as clear as day. His last name is Gabor. And he's amazing. He's done a documentary movie that literally changed my life. When I watched it, I went, "Oh my God, that's me." And it was shocking. Tell me his name because I know you're going to look it up.
I'm doing it while you're talking, and
Yeah, I know.
I'll stroke my beard just to keep you
No, I could see you typing. I could. What's his first name?
All right. So give me a science word that I can. GABOR.
And trauma plus trauma, and we'll find his name, because I think everybody in the world should see this movie, because if you don't have it yourself, somebody you know does.
Actually, his name is Dr. Gabor Mate, I think.
Ah, Gabor Mate. Okay, that was his first name. Okay, I think if I've watched it so many times, I think of him as a friend.
Not related to Jaja and Ava.
No, no, but really profound work that's being done now. And when you watch the movie, you realize it softens you completely to everyone you know, because you realize that it is the way you and I can have the same experience. But if I'm more sensitive, if I'm more empathic, if I'm in a different state of mind that day, we're going to remember that experience totally different. For me, it may be traumatic. For you, not so much.
Yes, and that's true of any room of 50 people, all
Yep,
observing exactly the same thing.
exactly.
And you'll get a kind of a bell curve, and the median in the center will have absolutely nothing to do with the extremities. And
Exactly.
the fun part of it is when you're saying all of this, the whole idea of the remembering and the forgetting, the first stage in making a difference with happiness is remembering that you can and forgetting.
Yeah. First stage is just going, oh, do you remember the commercial where the guy would slap his head? I could have had a V8.
100%.
And that was so memorable because everybody from that generation remembers that commercial. That is literally how I see it sometimes. It's, oh, man, I could have done a little gratitude. I would have felt better.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping people will get from some of my teaching. One of the programs I do that you know well is called Don't Believe Everything You Think, because we are thinking 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And, it's estimated that 95% of them are the same thoughts we thought yesterday.
And they're
And
not
80%
necessarily,
of those are likely to be negative.
I was just going to say, and they're mostly not your most enlightened thinking. Yes.
No, and many of them don't belong to you. You can get thoughts in your head by walking through the supermarket. I know it seems strange, but we're all energetic beings, and we're all picking up each other's energy.
Sure. Yeah.
So you happen to walk past somebody that just had a fight with a relative or something, and there's that. I mean, we've all had this experience. They're toxic. Their energy is toxic, and we want to clean ourselves off before we walk in our door.
Yeah.
And we're never taught this stuff. We're never taught that we can pick up other people's energy, and that when we're sitting in a team meeting at work, for instance, that we're going to pick up other people's thinking, we're going to pick up other people's energy, and there's no conversation about that.
Sure. And each one of those energy receptors doesn't connect you with their energy and thoughts. It connects you with the thoughts that have remained in your own body.
Oh, yeah.
Just sit there and are waiting to be activated by that until you have a mechanism for dispelling those and setting them free once and for all. And there are many practices for doing that. It's almost like, how do you take a metaphysical shower, right? How do you wash away these stuck things in your body? And the Eastern philosophies and the new age thinking and all of those sorts of things, they get people started. But the thought I want to bring you folks at home, I'm always mindful of how you listen to these things. JoAnna, you've been at this happiness gig for how long?
18 or 19 years.
Okay, so this is what we commonly would call an unconscious competence for you.
Yeah.
The muscles that you built all those years ago are strong enough in many cases and they're resilient enough that they can ward off a long-term nesting of the negative thoughts.
In many cases, but not completely. I would consider that at this point, that muscle should be a little stronger. And it wasn't until it was revealed to me that there was trauma underneath it all, that kind of made me realize, oh, is that why it's not working the way it should be working? Sure. When you tackle the trauma itself and clear it up and get it out of the body and get it out of your system, I have those light bulb moments all the time. Wow, this is much easier than it used to be, because I got rid of the stuff that was anchoring it to the past.
Yes. And the past, again, I love this model. It's not the real past. It's what
No,
it's your memory of your
your
memory
memory of
of
it.
your memory of your memory. And those things that you dwell on become so rich and they become so detailed. And quite frankly, there have been people like my mother was really good at this, God rest her soul. And she would tell all of us kids these marvelous stories about my grandfather that passed when he was 45 years old and she was 9. And so I would,
When
she
she
had,
was 9.
well, yeah, when she was 9, it was tough. And he passed actually, I want to say a few months before the youngest daughter was even born, who was 9 years younger than my mother. But the fun part of it is she had some older siblings, a brother and
Mhm.
six more sisters that were older than her. And so at the our family reunions, I would say, hey Al, can you tell me, my mom used to tell me about, my how grandpa would come home and he would walk through the front door and he would kick the top of the door sill, and then
Pick
I
the
had,
top of the door sill?
oh yeah, no, I mean I can do that, okay. But he
Oh,
was a big man. He was a tallish man. I'm 6'4", and I don't know how tall he was, but he's got, his son was 6'2", and his grandchildren, there's two of them that are 6'6" and 6'7". So he was a big man.
oh my gosh.
Those of you that are at home that are limber and are tall persons, women and men, can also kick a 6'7" or 6'8", door.
My goodness gracious, I'm looking at the door frame and going, I can't even reach it with my arms.
All right, so here's the rest of the story, the Paul Harvey version. So I would say, "Hey Al, Mom would tell me, these stories about this and that," and she'd look at me and she had this wistful smile on her face as if she was reverently remembering my mother, and she said, Billy, your mom had this amazing talent for remembering things that never happened.
Oh, wow.
And I said, yeah. And I said, she was so eloquent at telling the stories too. And in the end, it didn't matter that they didn't happen, did it?
I don't know.
This is the legacy that she was sharing with us
Yeah, yeah.
about a childhood that was real or imagined, and something that she took away that absolutely was noteworthy and worth sharing with the grandchildren of this man that we never met.
Wow.
So,
It's funny when I have conversations with my sister, which I do on a regular basis. Um, she'll bring up something from our childhood, and her memory is totally different than mine
oh yeah,
because her experience was totally different than mine.
for sure. Well, and that is necessarily so because, um, well, all right, I'm going to go out on a limb here and act like I know something, and just basically say that we have these defense mechanisms called filters that allow
Yeah.
us to process our lives and not go crazy from fear. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that being said, that necessarily two human beings will not have exactly the same filters in a given situation. And
Mhm.
that is exactly why two people can view a robbery and one person can think that the person that was stealing was doing it to feed their children at home and was totally justified. And the other person can think, what a rat. He needs to go to jail for the rest of his life, right? And neither one of them's wrong. They believe what they believe, and that belief system is what's allowing the facts to come to them, and the facts are getting altered by that filter and they don't realize they're blind to that.
We did some work this week around belief systems. And when I shared with my groups the fact that most of our belief systems are formed by the time we're 12 to 14 years old,
Sure.
they were in shock. It's like they didn't get it. And most of them are young parents. And so when we went around at the end and did our circle of appreciation, a lot of what came up was, boy, I really appreciate learning about that. I'm going to go home and have a conversation with my husband. I've
Yeah.
got a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I want to make sure we get the right filters in place, you know. But we don't realize that. We take that, and when two siblings are experiencing the same thing, they're different ages. They have different knowledge. They have different perceptions. So the same, just what we're talking about, the same thing can be remembered and stored differently. And
Yeah.
then from the filter, we create the assumption. And from the assumption, we create the behavior. And from the behavior, we create the words. And it goes on and on and on. And then you're out there in the world. And you don't realize that underneath it all, there are layers and layers and layers and layers of things that are really nothing more than perception.
They are like an unkempt closet that you just keep putting things in and never go through and sort it out.
Yeah.
And the neat part of it is there are technologies that are available for people who are interested in doing that to be able to go through a self inventory and maybe get to a point where they have some objectivity where there hasn't been any before.
Mm-hmm.
The most powerful thing for human beings is to notice what they can't see. Okay, those who was it that said, I can't remember right now, and it doesn't matter. It's not the things you don't know that cause you pain and hardship in your life. It's the things that you know and are absolutely sure of that are wrong.
Hmm. That's interesting.
So we all have those, you know. Every once in a while, I I get things challenged, that I have adopted as, yeah, this is a factual thing that we can go and verify it in a third, you know, uh,
Third
somebody who
part.
doesn't
Yeah.
care, who has
Yeah.
no dog in the fight, because it doesn't matter who's right, it matters what's right, right?
Right. Right.
And so, I'll say this like, very authoritatively, like I know what I'm talking about, and this is what's.
Oh, yeah. I know that.
And then I usually am like totally freaking wrong, you know, and it's both humbling and it's also self-restoring because I love learning new things every single day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I think it also helps you remember that you're human.
that's important.
I think it's very important. One of the things that I enjoy, especially when I'm working with leaders, the number one thing I teach is notice what you notice.
Yes.
And if you start paying attention to where your attention is, you'll learn a lot about yourself. And you're kind of tracking what's going on in your mind.
Yes.
I've been listening to Brene Brown over the last few days.
Yes.
Um, she is a widely read and incredibly amazing author. And her book Rising Strong is the one I've been listening to. And she did a series of talks on using Rising Strong as a spiritual practice. And I have listened to it completely all the way through twice already, and I'm probably going to go back again because it was that profound. And it's about challenging your own, a lot of it's about challenging your own thinking. And she uses a wonderful, she talks about, like writers often do, that Anne Lamott, who's a writer who writes about writing, talks about that every writer should have a shitty first draft. And that when you first start out to write, just pour it out, or crummy if you're dealing with somebody under 12.
I think that's an appropriate use of that word. I don't think that
Yeah.
was sloppy speaking at all. I think that
Yeah.
was the right place for that.
Yeah, I think she uses it well, and she uses it with her children. She uses the word crummy.
Yeah.
But and so I'm listening to it over and over again because I am now paying attention to my shitty first drafts, my first thoughts about things. And the first thoughts about things are very often not positive.
Sure.
And I've been writing some of them down, and they, even in the language that they use in the family and at work, use the term, what I'm telling myself about this situation is. So what I'm telling, the story that I'm telling myself about this is that I'm not competent, I can't get it done right, and that I have to work harder. Or whatever the story is. But there is such, she speaks with such clarity and honesty about her own life, using her own life experience as the lens, that it has been so meaningful for me. And I'm now all day long taking a look at, wow, that is the practice. What was I just thinking about that thing? Where did I let my mind go?
Yes. Yeah. The training that I took back in the 1990s probably spent the better part of a month working on the whole notion of listening to yourself listen.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah, and the main thing is that um, so the distinction between notice yourself, notice, and listen to yourself, listening to me with the training that I've had is that noticing allows you to take a second look at
Mhm.
what's in front of
Yeah.
you. And, you know, that's that other old saying, okay, it makes no difference what you and I are looking at, it only matters what we see, okay?
Mhm.
And that's why we see different things. But listening to yourself listening is to give special attention to that little voice or that group of voices or that chorus of voices or that choir of voices in your head that is constantly never letting you have a moment's peace. And
Right.
it is judging and assessing and it's making up stories and it's there's an answer to everything that happens in your life immediately if not sooner. And so listening to yourself listen allows you to start going taking a little bit of a contra attitude to the those negative thoughts, which are not
Wow.
they're not good thoughts, they're thought distortions. And they are not thoughts that you put there, as you mentioned earlier, JoAnna. How they got there, you can vote on, you can talk about it until the cows come home. It doesn't matter. But do you know who is the supreme leader and commander of every thought you just had and the next thought that's possible for you? It's going to be you. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you listen, to the tone of voice and the point of view of your what I call the predominantly prevailing thoughts that you are having, these are the ones that seem to persist and seem to come back over and over and over throughout the day. Or when you're with somebody that you, for good reason, over a period of years can't stand to be around, you're almost never reacting to the person that's in the room with you right now. And in many cases, they don't even have the same cells that they had when they pissed you off. Okay. So there's always this like remarkable opportunity to say, transformation is possible in this moment, and I'm going to go and get curious about that. I'm going to ask some questions around that. Let me just go and check what and see whether or not these facts that I know have any, relationship or any resemblance to reality.
And it's that curiosity that helps us change.
Yes.
It's that curiosity. But so many of us as children were not encouraged to be curious. In fact, we were encouraged to be quiet or stop asking so many questions. You're driving me crazy, or any of those things. And so we embed that, well, I don't really need to be curious, or it's not. And that's something that we really have to embrace
Yes.
is that sense of let me be curious. And curiosity is one of many positive emotions.
Yes. And here is the real cool thing about that. Almost any skill that we want to adopt at this age. And I love the whole notion of bringing the age that you are as an adult with the curiosity of a child, because you got to
Oh,
start
yeah.
there. I,
Yeah.
I want to tell you right now, if there's an instrument that you want to be playing, I'm 67, I'm going to be 68 in March. And I would like to reacquaint myself with guitar. I've owned guitars since I was a senior in high school. I've had a collection. I love my guitars, but they're strangers to me now. I'm
Me
going to
too.
have to start over and with humility make mistakes and recut my fingernails and get blisters and all that stuff to be able to play very simple music. And the whole thing that would drive me to do that would be the curiosity of, can I learn how to play Hotel California before I die? Or go back and play Stairway to Heaven the way I could when I was 25, 35, 45. So all of that is taking what normally would seem like I'll never. I got one more I'll never to share with you, JoAnna. You don't know this about me. I don't think I was this big when you and I first met. And we've only met on Zoom. One of these days, I'm going to give you a for real in live hug. Okay, I
Well,
promise.
I thought by now I would have gotten. I know so many people in Connecticut now. I thought by now I would have gotten up there. Well, you know what? I travel to where the jobs are. So if I have work up there, I'd be very happy to show up.
Same here, because I have like one of the most amazing long hugs waiting for you, like you've never.
Oh, I can't wait. And I'm looking at you and knowing that I'm going to get a bear hug.
You are. I'm a big
And
man.
I love that. Well, I had no idea you were that tall.
Well, I am, and I used to be that tall and that wide. I weighed 288 pounds at the beginning of COVID. I'm talking March of 2020. And in the last 18 months, 20 months, I decided that I was going to try to reduce one of my major comorbidities, which is obesity.
Yeah.
And so I did all that. And I used to have these dreams going back a year or two ago about running. And I have, according to my doctor, the last time that I was in, seeing an orthopedist, I have no cartilage, in my knees. I don't know that to be factual any longer. If it's possible to regenerate cartilage, I say I have. Um, and the thing of it is that having lost 45 pounds over that period of time, uh,
Congratulations.
I thank you. And I forgot that I wanted, that I'd had these dreams about running, okay, in the last 2, 3 years. And it was just like running the way that I did when I was, preparing for a wrestling season or football or something like that as fast as I possibly could. And sometimes indoors and sometimes out. Well, the point is this: 2 weeks ago, I started, I said, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to jog let's see if I can jog for 4 or 5 minutes and stand the pain. Well, holy crap. I jogged for 4 or 5 minutes and then I sat back down and I said, that wasn't bad. And then I did it again and I did it again. And I did it 5 times to get to 20 minutes. And then by, that was Monday. Tuesday, I did, well, let's try 8 minutes, And then I did that.
Oh,
By by Friday, I did 2 10-minute sessions, and then Monday I said, "Screw it, I'm going for it. I'm going to do a half hour of continuous jogging." And I did that, and I've been doing continuous jogging now for 7 or 8 days in a row, a half hour
wow.
each time. Yeah. And the really neat part of it is that not only did I completely dash my incorrect absolute assertion and I would have fought to the death, that no, I'm not, it's not a capability, it's not something that I possess any longer. And the guitar thing, I think some of you can relate to, but the physical side of actually moving this stuff around at my age, I feel vibrant, I feel young. It actually makes me feel wonderful during the course of the day. I get these little jumpy muscles every once in a while I'm sitting afterwards. But I've usually got my half hour run in by 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to share with you because although we are I would call you a very close professional friend,
Mhm.
and we've never met in person, and we've hung out and had some great conversations, but uh, it's an extraordinary experience for me to be here with you today. I am a blessed man, and I thank you for your kind attention and sharing what you know with our listening podcasting audience. They are beautiful people.
That's wonderful. I actually didn't know you had put together a podcast until a couple of weeks ago. And I was very pleased. I got the name for one, I got the podcasting. I did all of that, but couldn't quite get it off the ground. So I'm so proud of you for having actually taken it to where you have how many podcasts done
Um,
now?
Today we're recording number 87.
That's amazing. Do you record once a week?
Typically, yes.
Congratulations. That's really amazing.
We were looking around and watching, what was going on television and the social media and all the stuff, and very little of it had to do with Up With People, and very little of it had to do, how about you and me, just like, let's have that conversation again.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought we had made so many great gains in the 80s and 90s about
Yeah.
appreciating each other as human beings,
Mm.
allowing folks to kind of bring us into their world and take a chance and tell us what it's like to be them. And then the 2000s it started, and then horrible in the last 4 to 10 years.
I
and
know.
and so all of that, rather than cursing that and having big stories about how bad that is and all that, why don't we just do something else? Let's start a different conversation and see if it catches fire.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you did that. And I know that someday I will, but right now I've got to kind of shift my focus a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping actually to have more real life conversations. As this conference that I just spoke at, before I got on the phone with you, I was communicating by email with some of the people I met. And two people I noticed I wrote on their cards, they said such brilliant things in the course of, answering questions and making comments that I said to them, I'm going to call you up. I want to interview you
That's great.
because I think people should know about the people who are doing it right. And I know there's a lot of people doing it, but just like your take on what I had to say is different than anybody else's, my take on what they have to say will be different than anybody else's.
It's perfect because at the end of the day, anybody who's up to something that isn't about attracting attention to themselves and gaining either fame or notoriety isn't their attention is not about how if they're doing it right or not. Their attention is on, does it make a difference? Does it work? Am I
Exactly.
expressing what I want to see in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I get to really admire them and say, golly, they get it. They're doing it right. And the
Well,
new
I choose to see the people that are doing it right, so I
I
see a lot
love
of it going on.
yeah, I love it. Our social commentary about what works about people that we know is huge.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
All right. So guess what's happened?
What's happened?
We have talked for a while,
We
and,
certainly have.
and we are coming to the close of this absolutely beautiful time together. And do you have any closing thoughts for people or anything that you'd like them to take away, to be
Hmm.
thinking about, considering, coming back to this podcast and maybe a nugget or two of, like this is what it means to have made a decision to be happy first and live your life from there.
Yeah, I do. Maybe not as if I prepared it ahead of time, but extemporaneously, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, I think that my experience tells me that whenever you practice these things, like anything else, whenever you begin making the conscious decision that you are going to practice something different, you are going to get good at it in one way or the other. So if you practice a different way of thinking, and I think the key is questions. So I think asking the question, what's good about this? What's going well and why? What's possible here? What energy could I be in that would make this a, a more fun day for me? To be able to have a whole bunch of, I got them all over the house. To This one up here says, what else is possible here that I never even imagined?
Yes.
So I think to find yourself a couple of really good questions that are positive, that are appreciating, that are asset focused. Um, I like to. I have a list of them. I have my own personal ones. I have business ones. I think it's important to have lists of questions, and then when you're stuck in a funk, you're not stuck with all the old responses. You go to your list of questions and you bring up that curiosity that you were talking about, and something is going to shift.
Thank you. And I completely agree. And while you were speaking, it kind of pressed a couple of connections for me. And I think one of them is the whole notion of when something is pressing on you and it's creating a stressful environment or something that's hard for you to respond to, just remember, do the best that you can just for today, just for
Mm-hmm.
right now. Just do the best that you can. That's all that's called for. The best that you can. And your best is going to be good enough far more times than you would believe. And one other thing, we've all been told that practice makes
Oh, progress. It's not perfect. It doesn't make you perfect. It gives you progress. It moves you along, gives you
100%.
perspective.
I
Hmm?
knew that I knew that you would have gotten the memo, okay? It
Yeah.
always is about progress. It's never about perfection
No, ever.
because perfect and not done has absolutely nothing to do with a life. It's better that you do something and learn from the experience and then go back and with new curiosity, as you were saying so eloquently earlier. What does this mean? What have I learned? What is this about? What's the next thing for me?
Yeah. What can I do differently?
Yeah. So I want to thank you again, JoAnna Brandi. You are the queen of happiness in my world.
You can call me anything you want, sweetheart.
I thank you, and I will. So the main thing here is, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your time with us. It has made all the difference. And I think there were a couple of goosebump opportunities here today. I couldn't go back and tell you where to look, but listen again if you didn't catch them. So in the meantime, I just want to tell you all once again, I love you. The world is a beautiful place. So create it that way and have the best day ever. Bye for now. We'll see you again soon on another podcast.
Bye-bye. And thank you.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.